Okay, first question comes in for Brian, and it's from Jeremy Tan. Jeremy, thank you for the question. And he's wondering, Brian, if we're finding DNA function everywhere we look, do you mean every time we check, we find function as in 100% of the time? Brian, go ahead.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but the junk DNA, they figured that it was 8% because that's how much they figured that there was only 8% that was actually functional. And they thought the rest of it was junk. And it held back science for a long time, a whole long time. And now we're finding pretty much the trend is that it's almost everything it may not code for DNA, but it has to do with, it has function. And it's a gold mine. It's not something that it's Eugenie Scott said that it was one of the best evidence for evolution back in 98 because it was junk. And now we realize it's not junk. So I'm not sure if that answered the question or not, but that's...
I think to clarify, Brian, he might be wondering, according to the creationist position, how functional is the genome, or how functional would you expect it to be? 100%, 80%?
Oh, I'd expect it to be there's probably mutations in there. I think it was designed to be 100%, just like the vestigial organs. There used to be 100 vestigial organs taken out your tonsils, taken out your appendix, and now we realize, there's a function for that. So I think as time goes by, we're going to find functions for everything. It's in a design.
I appreciate it, Brian. Eric, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is in science, when we learn new things, we accept them and we update our models. Sometimes things are not readily accepted, like what Alfred Wegener thought about continental drift wasn't accepted, but now it's only creationists that deny plate tectonics. So there's the fact that we learn new things and have accountability in science is its strength. Christianity's never been updated and refined and improved. In fact, they're dogmatic and think that can't, and they think that can't happen. So what's the proper perspective? Somebody that tells you everything we believe is the ultimate and infinite truth and the only truth and the whole truth, so help you, or a system that self-improves. You decide.
Thank you, Eric. Brian, question was for you. Therefore, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's interesting. You ignore the founding fathers of science who brought us like Newton and Pascal and all them. And yeah, we adjust to science. We adjust to things. And the hydroplate is a perfect example. Well, if it can ever get in the mainstream, it's making accurate predictions. Going to hydroplate.org or on YouTube. And it's the findings that NASA's found as far as the DNA in Ryugu, and also these other amino acids or minerals that are on Bennu, those strongly validate the hydroplate. And so I think that, creationists, we change with the times too. And we're just trying to find out how God did it. And the hydroplate's a very good flood model, and it explains a lot of things. And so we'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, now we got one for you. Planet Peterson comes in from Echoing Erudite. Question for Planet. Do you agree science deals with facts, not imagination? And as an example, can you give one observable fact for evolution that doesn't rely on imagination or storytelling?
What kind of question is this? This seems to be the thing where people say, oh, but that's just an assumption. Literally, anytime you do anything, it doesn't have to be science. Literally, when you walk around your own house, you have to assume that your senses are giving you reliable information about what's going on in your house. Oh, maybe there's a tiger in the house, but you just can't see it for some reason. So what this guy's trying to do is to say that, evolution is predicated on assumptions, therefore it's not science. This is so incredibly stupid. What we saw today was Brian agrees that forensics is science, even though it's the study of things that happened in the past. Evolution is not a different kind of science. It works according to the exact same principles.
Thank you, Planet. And Brian, floor is yours. Go ahead.
It is not the same because forensics guys, they do not have to invent rescuing devices to make sure that they get the right answer. Where evolution is full of rescuing devices. It's what you imagine to be true, so you don't have to give up billions of years. And that would be the Oort cloud, never been observed. That would be, how do we get that'd be the multiverse. And that would be the dark matter, dark energy, all these things that you have to imagine to be true, even the soft tissue. They're going to try to figure out now, how did that last so long instead of just changing the dates of the dinosaur? And also, you had asked earlier that there was also geology points to 6,000 years too, because Russell Humphreys, he also accurately predicted the zircon rates, diffusion rates out of helium. And he did that with a 6,000 year model too. So biology, geology, astronomy, they all point to 6,000 years. If you aren't trying to make these rescuing devices to justify your position.
Thank you, Brian. Eric, you get the last word. Question was for you. Go ahead.
We can see billions of light years. How does that point to 6,000 years? That was the most hilarious moment of the debate. Brian was reduced to absolute silence when asked to come up with an explanation for that. So no, nothing about cosmology points to 6,000 years. Geology, absolutely nothing about geology points to 6,000 years. Radiometric dating uncontrovertibly gives us dates of billions and billions of years. And then I don't remember even what the third thing that was said points to it, if it's biology or evolution or whatever. But literally none of that points to 6,000. What a ridiculous statement.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate the responses. Next one comes in for Brian Lauer, comes in from Coco Rose. Would Brian be able to give us his definition of acceptable evidence, so we know where his starting point is?
Well, I think logic is good. Logic would be a good thing. I think a building had a builder, a painting had a painter, a creation had a creator. I think evidence should be logical. I don't think there should be inconsistencies in our worldview. I think it's absurd to think that a building had a builder, a painting had a painter, but a creation did not have a creator. This building that I'm in, it's absurd to think it got put together by blind chance. And yet I'm supposed to think my body got put together by blind chance. So what evidence? And also testable. Let's test it. Let's not make up when we find evidence, let's not make up some rescuing device to make it last longer, like iron or whatever. I think the evidence should be testable, logical, and factual. And I believe that's strongly on the creation side.
Thank you, Brian. Planet Peterson, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
There's absolutely nothing about I'm just going to keep going back to the same thing, I guess. There's absolutely nothing about the fact that our observable universe is 43 billion light years in radius that is consistent with a 6,000 year creation model. Brian's brought up rescuing devices several times. All you have is a rescuing device, because if the Bible didn't exist, nobody could get to 6,000 years. Your only choice is to stutter and stammer and say, well, God did it that way with his word. So that's what I would say in response to that.
Eric, thank you very much. Brian, you get the last word on this one. Go ahead.
You got the same light problem, Eric. You got the horizon problem. You can't get light over all those either. You got the same problems. And it's scientifically, we don't have to have rescuing devices to explain comets or the magnetic fields. It all fits in a young Earth creation. It all fits.
No, it doesn't.
It sure does. And
How does it fit the existence of comets?
We're not 10,000 years old. How do you explain that they're there after billions of years?
Again, shift the burden of proof. So you can't do it for comets. Why can we see 43 billion light years? How is that consistent with 6,000 year creation timeline?
See, that's a distance. That's not a time. That's a distance. And
can light travel that many light years in 6,000 years?
I don't know what God can do with light.
So you don't have anything. All you do is retrofit your conclusion into the evidence.
You don't have anything either. No, I don't
The
know
only
how
reason
the
we
Big Bang happened.
know
I don't
any
know
of
how
this
life
stuff is
began.
because of science. The Bible never told us anything about the true structure of the cosmos, whether or not other galaxies exist, how big it is. It never did any of that. You retrofit your conclusion into the evidence, violating the spirit of science.
No,
Anyways.
the Bible gives us the framework for biology. It's everything produces after.
Talking about the size of the universe, Brian.
What?
Talking about the size of the universe, Brian. You don't have anything for that. You can't get
God can
43
do that.
billion light years from 6,000 year creation, except to say, I believe in God and God did it that way.
Well, what you do is, I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it happened. So you're an I don't know of the gaps. I may be a god of the
Big Bang
gaps.
model is extremely rigorous and well tested.
Go into cosmology.org and you're going to see a bunch of people that say this doesn't work. You have to add, because when Danny Faulkner when he was in college in the 80s, they had 100% confidence in the Big Bang, and it didn't have inflation or dark matter or dark energy or string theory, and they had to add that to keep it from falling apart. And now they have 100% confidence in the Big Bang today, and he says it's not a matter of if it falls apart, it's a matter of when it falls apart. And it would have fallen apart a long time ago, but they don't have anything to replace it with. And that's what I think the hydroplate will destroy the Big Bang. If anybody watches Kevin Lee's talk at Creation Forum, it destroys the Big Bang, because everything.
The hydroplate is a stupid flood narrative about geology. That's going to disprove cosmology.
Hey, why is the near side of the moon pounded and the far side isn't? The moon or the Earth protects the near side. How come we got the lava flows on the near side and not the far side? Why is the Pacific Ocean so much different than the other ones? What caused the Mariana Trench? You know, how did a mammoth freeze standing up? How come they find rounded boulders in asteroids?
And that tells us how old the universe is. A mammoth that was frozen.
Well, we can explain it. Can you?
No, you can't. You just say God did it.
No,
that's not an explanation.
Well, I'll explain it for you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because the fountains of the Great Deep broke up with such tremendous force that some of the stuff went up into outer space. And
what evidence of that do you have?
The standing frozen mammoth. We also have accurate predictions.
You think that comets falling to the Earth, comets, you know that objects that re-enter Earth's atmosphere from space are going dozens of kilometers per second and explode when they hit the ground, right? But that's gonna freeze dry a mammoth.
Well, that's because they're coming in with such tremendous force. If they just go up there and then slowly come back, they're going to come down and they're going to freeze the mammoths. Okay, how about accurate predictions?
You have evidence that happened?
How about accurate predictions?
Do you have evidence that any of that happened?
Oh, yeah. Accurate predictions are evidence of a robust theory.
Do you have any evidence that comets slowly came down to the Earth?
I'm not talking comets. I'm talking the water that's shot up from the fountains of the Great Deep.
Sure. Do you have any evidence of that?
Yeah, the Mid-Oceanic Ridge. What do you think caused the mountain range? What do you think caused the mountain range to grow in two directions by stretching? Most mountain ranges are crushed together.
Magma comes up to the surface and reforms, and it's a divergent plate boundary.
Look at the tension cracks; they're straight.
Look at the ages of the oceanic crust, and notice that it makes a perfect pattern going outward. Anyways, we can't have a new debate within the debate here. People asked questions, but
the audience enjoyed the mini round 2 during the Q&A. We can call that the Great Comet / Hydroplate Theory debate. So, gentlemen, okay, again, appreciate the energy. Let's move on now to the next question. As a matter of fact, it looks like we do have a question on the hydroplate hypothesis. So good time to bring this one up, perhaps. Question for both, but more so directed at you, Brian. And so let's go through it. Sydney Raptor, appreciate the question. If hydroplate hypothesis is true, where did the additional 3.5 times the current amount of water go? That's how much is needed to cover the world.
Well, that's because you're thinking that that Mount Everest is as high as it was during the flood. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the water was above Mount Everest. I'm saying Mount Everest was under the water. There's a big difference. Mount Everest wasn't there during the flood, and it rose up. And if you would take the oceans and rise them up and push the land down, so you'd have a perfectly round Earth, you'd have 1.5 miles of water over everything. And so that's where the water came from, or the water came from the fountains of the great deep. We believe that half of the ocean was inside the Earth at one time, and then it erupted out, and now a lot of it went up into tremendous force, and and went into comets and asteroids, and that's why Kevin Lee is able to make accurate predictions, and NASA is wrong, and they're spending millions of dollars wasting it because they think asteroids are solid, and they're actually floating rock piles. And that's how we get peanut-shaped asteroids. That's how we get contact binaries and moons and asteroids with moons. They thought that was impossible in the 70s, and now they keep finding them everywhere. And the only thing that explains it is the hydroplate, and yet it's being kicked to the curb. And so that's where the water came from and where the water went.
Brian, thank you very much. Eric, over at Planet Peterson, floor is yours. Go ahead.
The idea that asteroids in space can only be described by this hydroplate thing, this is so ridiculous. So Brian will get the last word, and here's what he's not going to do. Brian, give any evidence for your specific claim about most of the water was in the Earth and then it came out of the Earth. What Brian's doing is giving his hypothesis and then just saying this is what could have happened, and then there's never any evidence for it. So go ahead. What specific evidence do you have that the water came out of the Earth and then and Mount Everest wasn't as tall?
Serpentine.
What evidence of that do you have?
Okay, you want to sell? Well, it came out serpentine. They found that in asteroid Bennu, and that's just where the mantle touches the water, and they found that up in the comet. And then also the comets they're making accurate predictions. Accurate predictions are the currency of science, and there's a whole bunch of them for the hydroplate. And Kevin Lee accurately predicted what they'd find in comets, and NASA was wrong. He accurately predicted what the structure of asteroids would be, and NASA was wrong. And so it's time to bring this theory into the fold and start discussing it. And yet the big bangers, they won't let it in the door. Oh no. Our way is the only way to think. So you have to think like us. That's because we're the scientists and we're the ones who messed up junk DNA and vestigial organs. But to keep
miracles
our word
aren't science. Brian Lauer.
Keep our word for it. But no, I want people to be able to discuss things openly. I don't think ideas to be cast out. It's like if I had a chest of gold and I hid it and I'll give you all the grant money to find it, and I'll give it, and you can only look in your apartment building, but I hide it outside. You'll never find it. And that's what's happening today. God is the answer, but you won't look for him because it's not allowed. And I'm just saying, let the ideas go let people think wherever they go, and don't fire them for thinking differently. And I think that's as disgusting as it can be. You force people to think that your way is right. Your way is right, and it's the only way to think. And that's not science. That's indoctrination.
Okay, gentlemen, appreciate the responses on that one and the mini hydroplate debate there. Very good, very interesting. Kevin's biblical discussion. So that one was for you, Brian, or at least directed towards you. Planet Peterson, this one's for you. So Kevin says, for Planet Peterson, what is metaphysically necessary for everything?
This is like... This is a gobbledygook question. I would think that Brian agrees that this is a gobbledygook question. In fact,
I'm glad it went to you, Eric.
You know what the definition of metaphysics is, or one of the definitions? An abstract theory with no basis in reality. So to say that this is some weird Philbro, just unbearable stuff. What is metaphysically necessary for everything? On what grounds are we claiming that something that is metaphysical is the reason that things exist? Like, what the hell does necessary for everything mean? The reason things exist? The reason things are intelligible? What? This is just complete nonsense. But the other thing about metaphysical claims is there are like, I've been reading some like philosophy from
good for you, Jason Lyle.
No.
Oh,
No
bummer.
philosophy. No.
Bummer.
This is like some Vienna Circle stuff about logical positivism, and not everything in it resonates with me, but they kind of reject this concept of metaphysics sort of in whole. But I'm rambling too much. But you take competing metaphysical claims, they are empirically unjustifiable, and so you have no recourse for going with one over the other. So this is just a nonsense question.
Metaphysics showdown between Planet Peterson and Kevin's biblical discussion. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Brian Lauer, over to you. The floor is yours. What are your thoughts?
I don't know what to say, but I'm thankful that Kevin stuck to the end, and anybody else who's still listening.
Yes, you guys have provided more than enough entertainment for this Saturday night Origins showdown. Even made me sweat a little bit, guys. So definitely both coming in swinging tonight. Who hit the home runs? That's up to the audience. So, okay, that was for you, Planet Peterson. Now we got to get a question for Brian, who's here on Planet Earth tonight. And so let's... Oh, I had one. Here we go. Okay. Liam B. Question for Brian. If plate tectonics are false, how are there mountains?
That's because during the hydroplate, the water was gushing up with such tremendous force, and these two cliffs, 60 miles high, were crumbling into the force, shooting them out. And the cliffs got wider and wider and wider. And then pretty soon there's nothing pushing down on the Atlantic Ocean and the mantle, and it bulges. So now you got North America and South America sliding to the west, and you got Africa and Europe sliding to the east, and they keep going until they meet resistance, and then they buckle up. And that's why the mountain ranges are pretty much parallel to the mid-oceanic ridge and mid-Atlantic ridge. And that's how we got the mountains. And then the mountains sink down and some has to rise up. And that's how we got the plateaus.
Thank you, Brian. Eric, floor is yours.
I shared my screen. Can we show that for a second?
Yes. There you go.
So what we find is when we mapped the ocean floor, we found all these mid-ocean ridges, and we call these divergent plate boundaries. And the idea is that over vast stretches of time, the continents have moved into their current positions. The continental puzzle works with that extremely well. The mid-ocean ridge works with that extremely well. Brian, I think what you need to reckon with is, why on earth is it that the radiometric dating of the ocean floor perfectly mirrors what you would expect? It's youngest at the mid-ocean ridge, and uniformly in both ways gets progressively older as you go away from it. That absolutely confirms the traditional secular narrative about plate tectonics being a long and drawn out process. So that'll be it.
Oh, keep the picture up there if you would. If you want to keep your picture up.
Because, I can do that.
Yeah. Because that picture, they use that Astro Alexandra. She did a thing on what they found on Bennu, and she used that picture, and she said that serpentine comes when the mantle touches the water, and they found that in Bennu, and she's thinking there's got to be this big water planet that used to be floating around, and she's just a victim of our government education, because she won't even consider that the water planet is Earth. And so, yeah, she used that picture. And it validates the hydroplate, because how else does it get out there? And anyhow, yeah. So, and then
Brian, if you could, why on earth does the radiometric dating follow this precise pattern and give you dates of hundreds of millions of years?
Well, why on earth does radiometric dating tell us that Mount St. Helens lava is 340,000 to 2.8 million years
That's within
old?
the acceptable range of error.
Yeah, but it should be 10 years old. They took it from the lava.
You don't understand what a range of error means then.
Well, if that's your test, something that's 10 years old and it shows up as 340,000 to 2.8 million is acceptable to you?
Because that's the range of error. It's an inappropriate test. We've dated the volcanic ash at Pompeii, and we get the exact right number.
Yeah, well, they date them a whole lot other places and get the wild numbers. And we're supposed to expect...
Because there's a range of error.
Yeah. Yeah,
if your measuring tool measures in increments of a of billions of years, and the error rate for that is 0.0001%, then that means the age can fluctuate by 125,000 years. So if you date something that formed yesterday, the range of answers you're going to get is going to be within 125,000 years. But that's not the appropriate way to do the dating technique.
And that was,
again, that's a process that is 99.9% accurate, because the error range is only 0.001%. Well, it's 0.001, not 0.001%. But that doesn't, like, if you can't see that, then I don't really know what to tell you. You just got to look at.
Well, one experiment is worth 1,000 expert opinions. So when they misdated that, I mean, so that means they could be wrong on the age of the Earth then. You know, they could be wrong on a lot of things.
No, there's a range of error, but things that measuring systems that work in increments of billions of years can have an error range of maybe 1 million years, and 1 million's a big number, but it's only 1/1000th of a billion. So it's 99.99% accurate.
Yeah, I've got the ranges. I've got the data, and it fits within the range. I mean, the ranges aren't that big. I don't know if I can find it, but yeah, I might not be able to find it. But yeah, the range, it shouldn't, 10-year-old lava. And so we're going to say that's millions of years old. And
no.
Also KBS.
The acceptable error range is going to be a big number, because potassium-40 has a half-life of 1.25 billion years. So if it's 99.9% accurate, that means the fluctuations in the error range, or whatever we call that, within the measurement is going to give you these huge numbers. So something that formed yesterday can look like it's thousands of years old. You need a different and a proper dating technique for doing that. I'm just saying the same thing over and over again, but this just comes down to margin of error and inappropriately using the margin of error.
Yeah, I can't find that right now. Oh, no, I don't. I don't have that. But yeah, they misdated the KBS Tough that was 220 million years old, and then they found a skull on it and said, oh, we got to fix the date on that. And yeah, I've got this like Mount St. and Hawaii, they misdated that too. It came up to 1.6 million years, and it should only have been a couple hundred years, and the margin of error is 160,000. And they also did Mount Etna in Sicily, and that was 25,000 years. It shouldn't have been, and that was a 8,000 year range. And there was another ones that go on, but that's the detail part.
I mean, you're just cherry picking studies, because we've been able to cross-correlate radiometric dating with Vesuvius or Pompeii, and we get the correct date.
Well, maybe you're the one that's cherry picking, because I found the Mount St. Helens one, and the whole rock specimen was 350,000 years with a margin of error of 0.05 million years, and Feldspar was 340,000 years with a plus or minus of 6,000. And then the Amphibole was 900,000 and with a plus or minus of 200,000. And the Pyrex one was 1.7 million with a error of 300,000. And the Pyrex one, another one, was 2.8 million with an error rate of 600,000. So they're way outside their error rates. So this experiment proved
that table doesn't say what you're saying.
Sure it does.
No, you're telling me how old it is. Because you don't have what the actual age of these things is up there anywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could share it to the screen if you want to look at it.
I can say I don't like, we have to answer people's questions.
All right.
I do want to talk about it, but at the same time,
yeah, that's fair. Yep, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. Give the people
right there's a good place to wrap up that question. Now we got a mini great radiometric dating debate. So you guys are giving it's been a general night tonight, right? The proper perspective of the past, present, and future. And you gentlemen have literally discussed just about everything related to origins, ancestry, creation, evolution. So, okay, next one for Planet Peterson comes in from Brad. Ask Peterson to present the evidence for the causal testability that proves random mutation is the means of taxonomic emergence.
Ask Peterson to present the evidence for the causal testability that proves, the fossil record. Like the number of Darwin predicted that an Archaeopteryx organism should be found. And then it was found like a year after he published on The Origin of Species. Neil Shubin predicted Tiktaalik, and then they found it exactly where they thought that they would find it. The transitional forms we have for whales and horses and the different hominids and what else? What was the other one I had up there? Like tetrapods and brontotheres in Badlands National Park in South Dakota. We have countless of these. So yeah, it's known, it's been tested, it's been confirmed over and over again.
Thank you, Eric. Brian, any thoughts?
Actually, it's been falsified. Dr. Carl Werner, he falsified evolution, and actually his theory, he wanted to prove evolution. And so he came up with a theory. Well, you don't prove things, you falsify them. And he said, if evolution is false, we should find the modern animals in the fossil record because they didn't change. They didn't evolve. And that's what he found. He's got a book called Living Fossils, and it's just full of living fossils. And the weird thing is they look identical, but scientists think they're different genus and different species, apparently because they're blinded by their millions of years thing. And then he also did another one, and he found 150 frauds in human evolution. And yeah, it's very interesting. And he says you can't find this in the science journals. You have to go and interview them and take pictures of them yourself. And he's got 3 volumes of this. And so people do cherry pick. And if you want your grant renewed, you're going to find the evidence that they want you to find, or you're not going to get your grant renewed. And that happens in medicine. It happens a lot of places. And that's not science, but that is the reality of the situation.
Thank you, Brian. Eric, you get the last word on this one. Go ahead.
None of those fossils have had their DNA analyzed. So to say that they're the same thing is literally false. Well, it's not literally false. It's not known.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, next one for Brian Lauer, Sydney Raptor. His question is this: what is Brian's citation for comets and asteroids being from Earth?
Accurate predictions. People with this model make accurate predictions on what that's his. You can check out Kevin Lee. He's got these. Go out in the TCCSA. They got a YouTube channel, or just any of Kevin Lee's talks. I think he was at the Great Plains Forum or something. He stood face to face with a NASA scientist and said, "You're going to find stuff from the Earth and the comet." And the NASA scientist, "No, we'll find stuff from the outer solar system. You know, that's where the Oort cloud is." And he was stunned to find stuff from the inner solar system. And some of the stuff could only be made in scalding hot water, like cubonite. Where do you get scalding hot water? And it fit the hydroplate perfectly. And then he emailed the same guy and he said, "Hey, if you try to redirect an asteroid and it'll work if it's a solid rock, but it'll fail if it's a bunch of loosely held boulders." And guess what? It was a bunch of loosely held boulders, which is exactly what the hydroplate would predict. And then also what they're discovering, what they're bringing back from the comets, and it just perfectly comes from Earth, and yet they're blinded by their blind chance perspective, and they just can't connect the dots. And we want all the voices allowed in the science room. I don't think they should be kicked to the curb, especially if a theory's making accurate predictions. I am just appalled at the lack of curiosity in our science departments at St. Cloud State and in our college and in our high schools. They only think one way. It's like this is the only way to think, and they can't think a different way. And that's really hurting science in a lot of big ways.
Thank you, Brian. Eric, floor is yours.
I mean, we've heard hydroplate described a million times, and I don't want to prolong the discussion here for an explanation, but we've never had an explanation of actually what it is. And this thing that it's making accurate predictions, we would need to see when and where did they make the prediction for this, what year or whatever was it, and then when did we find this out? Because I see a lot of people they take the conclusions we have and we say, yeah, that was we predicted that, when it's like, no, you took the data we had and then you built a model and retrofit your conclusion in with it. But even if they have some predictions, that's cool. But you need to, if it doesn't preclude another explanation, then it hasn't confirmed itself or falsified something else either.
Thank you, Eric. Brian, you get the last word on this one.
Yeah, you can check out Calvary Port Orchard, calvarypo.org or something like that. That's where he's the pastor, and he also gives these talks. And I've got a whole Hydroplate channel just specifically on this, and I show the emails. You can check the dates, you can see the evidence, and then you can conclude for yourself. This is making accurate predictions. It's hitting the ball out of the park. And the scientists, because they're so blinded by their blind chance perspective, they just won't allow another perspective in the door. It's really hurting science. And so then NASA, they want to take photographs of these things impacting the asteroids, and they get all this stuff flying up, and it blinds the camera. So they waste, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars because it was too close because of all the dust. They should have had it wait, and they didn't. But listen, Pastor Kevin Lee, Port Orchard, Washington, I believe, calvarypo.org. You can see these things. It's his emails, and he stood face to face, and it's just stunning. And then they had Walt Brown, he's the guy who figured out the theory, have him make predictions before they found out what they found. And he was right. He was right. And yet they get kicked to the curb.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, we'll do 2 more questions, one more for each of you. Planet Peterson, I can already tell you are going to love this one from Jeffrey Luciana. Question for Peterson. Can you tell us what happened between 401 million and 400 million years ago? I mean, it's only a million years. What are your thoughts, Eric?
I could look up I could search and find out what we know about a particular part in the world from precisely these dates. I don't have any of that off the top of my head, but I mean, what is this supposed to prove? I mean, I'll reach across the aisle here, Brian. I would assume Brian also thinks, what on earth would this prove? That, like, in the Bible, the Bible records many, many stories, but it's not a chronological history of from 6,000 years ago to the time Jesus died. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of years of gaps in there. So therefore, the Bible's false. Therefore, like, what? This is just stupid.
I told you, you're going to love this question, Planet Peterson. Yeah. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad. It's a difficult question. I don't know really how to answer it, but I think the 400 million years is a belief system. And I think that it's got a lot of assumptions with it, and even with the radiometric dating. And I would like to actually thank Jeffrey, too, for staying to the end, and anybody else who is still here.
People are enjoying it. And you guys are good sports. You guys came in full of energy, came in swinging, held each other's feet to the fire, and you're both smiling for the most part, and you both look pretty content after almost a few hours. So thanks for being good sports and having thick skin. That's what we need in debates, right? So, okay. Well, Peterson, you get the last word if you'd like it. Go ahead.
I don't think I can. I mean, Brian didn't say anything to like rebut or respond to, really, and I already told you my thoughts on the question here. So,
okay, no worries. Donzo has a question for Brian. How can we tell what is design and what is not? Do you have examples of each?
Well, yeah. If there's a purpose for it, it was designed like an arrowhead that looks different than a normal rock that's found in nature. And you could even go one step farther. If there's multiple parts working together, like look at the engine of your car. Did that just come about by chance? No, that's multiple parts working together with precision timing for a purpose. And guess what? Multiple parts working together with precision timing for a purpose. If our engine couldn't evolve, there's no way our bodies could evolve, because we're a gazillion times more complicated than an engine with a whole bunch of chicken and egg problems. It had to be fully formed, fully functional, right from the get-go, or we're dead.
Thank you, Brian. Planet Peterson, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, Brian, I don't think you actually answered the question because you said, let me give you an example of something we know is designed. I know that thing is designed. And then you said, therefore, a human is designed. So I guess, like, and you said, well, the test would be it has a purpose. So I guess I would just slightly modify the question, throw it back to you. What evidence that the universe is designed do you see?
The perfectly balanced, the finely tuned universe, all these the cosmological constants that have to be just perfect. And for us to have that, they have to posit a multiverse. The only way we got to be in the perfect universe is if there's an infinite number of other universes, and then we just happen to be in the right one. And so there's a lot of rescuing devices. And then going back to his question, I think I did answer it. An arrowhead has a purpose. You can see this as an arrowhead, and a regular rock, it just is laying there. You can tell if something was designed, if it's been modified, and then especially, like Mount Rushmore. It'd be absurd to think that George Washington's face formed on that mountain by chance. That'd be
Brian, nobody disagrees that a human made Mount Rushmore. We know that.
Right, but how much?
Like, I don't think that the planet Saturn was
finish my point. Can I finish my point before you? Okay, it'd be absurd.
I'm just trying to get you on more on topic.
It would be absurd to think George Washington's face got there by natural processes, and yet we're supposed to believe that George Washington himself got there by natural processes. I mean, that's just that takes way more faith than I got. I just can't believe that.
Gentlemen, that wraps up our audience Q&A and the debate itself. Again, a solid, energetic, engaging debate. Brian Lauer and Planet Peterson, I do appreciate you both being willing to join us for a few hours on this Saturday night debating the question, what is the proper perspective of the past, present, and future? Let's get some final words and final thoughts. Again, I appreciate you guys doing this. That includes giving us the time to prep and study for debates like this, and also the time you give for the debate itself. Brian, let's start with you. Thanks so much for doing this. Final words, final thoughts.
Well, I think thank you, Donnie, for putting this together, and thank you, Eric, for stepping up to the microphone. I think it's good for us to listen to people who are outside of our echo chambers, and so I appreciate the insights that you've had. And I just want to apologize to everybody in the audience. My timer went off, so that kind of threw me off. And then my rebuttal thing was gone, so I had to throw that together on the fly. So I apologize for that. But again, I think this is what we need. We need a free flow of ideas so that all the ideas can be critiqued. And in this idea of censoring ideas and keeping them out of the mainstream and not allowing those ideas, I think that's a real science stopper. And then again, the belief systems. If we're just mutated animals, what's wrong with killing animals? And I think that's the wrong perspective. I think there's a better perspective that leads to a lot better place.
Thank you very much, Brian, for those final words, final thoughts. Again, for those in the audience, if you like what you're seeing and you've enjoyed what you've seen from Brian Lauer here, do check out his YouTube channel and also his website, Solidify Your Faith. Eric Peterson from Planet Peterson, thank you as well for your time and for engaging in tonight's event. Let's hand it to you for some final words, final thoughts.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to say too much because I kind of just echo at least the first part of what Brian was saying. I'm glad we do this kind of thing, and it is important. So, thanks for being here, and it was cool. It was heated, but no animosity or anything like that. The one thing I want to do actually is I had a friend that had a question for Brian, but they wouldn't be able to watch the stream because they were going to be traveling. And so they weren't able to super chat their question, but it's a really short one. Brian, is it cool if I just ask you the question quick?
That's fine. Yeah.
They wanted to know, do you still actually think, and are you going to keep saying that the Big Bang is when nothing turned into the universe? Because they think that's really uncharitable and not accurate.
Yeah. Where did the matter come from? It can't be.
We don't know, but we don't say that it came from nothing. So and I had this same sentiment. I don't get why you say that. It's a really bizarre, cheap attack, I think.
Well, that's what Lawrence Krauss said. It came from nothing. The universe.
Have
from
you read
nothing.
his book? Because he doesn't say that it's literally nothing.
Well, yeah, then it's not nothing. He changed the definition
Exactly.
of nothing. And then before that, you had the guy in the wheelchair. He said the universe from gravity. So how do you
Gravity's not
gravity?
nothing. Gravity's not nothing. So you're going to continue saying that people like me believe that nothing turned into the universe, even though I'm sitting here telling you that we don't think that?
Well, what did turn into the universe then?
We don't know. That's
Exactly.
not the claim that it was nothing.
So you don't know if nothing turned into it, and you don't know if God did it. So you really can't.
Yeah, I'm not
say that God
saying
didn't do
that.
it.
No, yeah, but you're putting words into my mouth. Do you not see that?
Well, if you don't know how it happened, how do you know God didn't do it?
I don't know that. I'm agnostic, but you don't have evidence for it.
There we go.
But the question is, are you going to keep telling people that atheists believe nothing turned into something? Because that's
show me how I'm wrong.
I literally have told you several times.
Well, no, you say you don't know how it came from. Well, show me what it did come from. If it wasn't
Ryan,
nothing,
I had to ask. Well, we'll have to move on here. I think everybody gets it. I had to ask you 3 times that if I don't know, does that mean that I claim it came from nothing? And you refused to answer it. So I think you've kind of been caught here in that. But anyways.
Well, not knowing doesn't prove that it didn't come from nothing or that it didn't come from God.
That's not it. Saying I don't know isn't an endorsement. I can't say it any more clearly than that. So I really hope you stop straw manning our position like that.
Well, what is your position? What did the universe come from?
I've told you so many times I don't know.
Okay, so you don't know what happened.
And that includes that the universe came from anything. There's no logical problem.
Well, if you don't know that it didn't come from nothing, how can you say that I'm wrong?
You're putting words in my mouth, Brian.
Well, why should I stop saying it then? If you can't prove me wrong.
Why should you stop lying about what I believe?
How is it a lie?
You're actually asking me that?
How is it a lie if you can't prove that it didn't come from nothing?
Brian, do I believe that the universe came from nothing?
Well, Lawrence Krauss does, but then he changed the definition.
You are so incapable of engaging in good faith with this. Do I believe that?
Well, if I'm wrong, prove it. I don't know is not proof.
Do I believe that the universe came from nothing?
Apparently not.
Okay.
But you don't know what it did come from.
Then it's wrong for you to go around saying that's what I believe because it's a lie and you're putting words into my mouth. That's the answer to your question.
You believe
Why
that.
should I stop doing it? Why should Brian Lauer stop lying? I would hope that Brian Lauer doesn't want to be a liar. But if you're going to peddle this nonsense, then I guess maybe that's your only choice. And Lawrence Krauss doesn't believe it either. He wrote a clickbaity title book and he said that it's not literally nothing. It could be gravity, which is what I mean.
He's got these 3 flavors of nothing. He changes the meaning of a term. So nothing doesn't mean nothing. Talk about being underhanded. How about that?
Brian, Eric.
I was just going to say, it's a cheap marketing trick.
Well, yeah, it sure is. It sure is. That's like one thing. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Post-debate, post-credit scene, a debate about whether or not the universe came from nothing. And gentlemen, you gave us one to remember tonight. That is the proper perspective of the past, present, and future between Brian Lauer from Solidify Your Faith and Eric Peterson over at Planet Peterson. Gentlemen, we are going to wrap things up now for tonight. To the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And thank you for the feedback, the interaction, and the questions for our awesome guests tonight. With that, thanks again for tuning in, and Standing for Truth is out.